You ever wake up one morning, look out your window, and realize your whole neighborhood's been holding its breath just waiting for you to snap? That was me, robe and coffee in hand, staring down the HOA president's shiny SUV parked sideways in my driveway, blocking my truck so I couldn't get to work. And let me tell you, her little smirk through those tinted windows, like she was daring me to make a scene, just about broke something in me for good. That's how all this started, right there with the smell of diesel and fresh gravel mixing in the morning air, my thumb hovering over the sheriff's number, wondering how far a man could go before he got labeled the crazy one on the block. You know what I mean? In a little lakeside neighborhood like ours, it doesn't take much for a feud to catch fire. See, for months I watched the HOA board and their friends treat my driveway like it was extra parking for the clubhouse whenever they had a potluck or a meeting, just rolling right over my property line like it was nothing. I tried polite notes, voicemails to the management company. Heck, I even made up some flyers and stapled them to the HOA bulletin board, but nothing changed. If anything, it just made them laugh behind my back at the diner. Then they started sending me letters about my own grass being too tall, real cute. So by the time that SUV boxed me in, I'd had enough. I started snapping pictures, installed a dash cam aimed right at the driveway, and started a folder, dates, times, license plates, you name it. Still nothing moved the needle. In this place, the HOA thought they were royalty, and the rest of us were just serfs mowing their castle lawns. But I grew up on a farm. Property lines were sacred, and you only warned a trespasser once. After that, well, let's just say folks learned the hard way. First thing I did was send out certified letters, quoted county ordinances, property rights, some real obscure codes my uncle, a retired sheriff's deputy, once told me about, and I slapped a deadline on there too. Of course, the board ignored me, probably figured I was another city transplant with no stomach for a real fight. But every night after work, I was out in my workshop piecing together what you might call creative deterrence, legal but dramatic. I welded big metal spikes onto rubber mats, painted up vehicle damage, possible warning signs, even made myself a fake blast radius diagram with bright orange chalk. My masterpiece, a bunch of plastic canisters full of compressed air and biodegradable dye, buried right on the property line, my version of Landmines all theater, but not a bit illegal. And yeah, when a car rolled over one of those, it'd pop with a hiss and a huge cloud of orange powder, harmless but enough to scare you back to Sunday school and humiliate you at the same time. I tested it on an old mower. It worked like a charm, but before I rolled it out, I called the county sheriff, Caldwell, gruff old guy, who'd watched me graduate high school, seen his share of neighbor wars. I laid out my photos, every letter, every second of video, showed him my setup, explained it was just air and dye. Caldwell shook his head, chuckled, and told me as long as the signs were clear and nobody got hurt, it was my land, my circus, my monkeys, said he wouldn't mind seeing the HOA get a little wake-up call for once. So that night, I set my trap. You ever set a trap and know you're going to catch something? That was me, air cold and sharp. Crickets chirping, distant lake lapping behind the house, rolling out those mats just inside my line, making sure every sign was clear. Next morning, before sunrise, here come the headlights, same SUV, same smug president heels clicking on my gravel like she owned it. She parked, looked at her phone, then boom. Front tire hit the canister, orange dust exploded everywhere. She shrieked, stumbled, set off another. The whole side of her fancy SUV looked like a construction zone. Porch lights flicked on, neighbors started recording. I just sipped my coffee, told her to go ahead and call the police. The sheriff already knew. Sheriff Caldwell rolled up, took his sweet time, greeted me by name, told her flat out it was legal, harmless, and honestly the best thing he'd seen all month. She tried to argue, sputtered, climbed back in her tie-dye SUV, and peeled off tires, squealing. I felt like I'd just won a round in a championship boxing match. Posted the video to our private group, but it leaked. Next thing I know, my phone's blowing up, folks calling me a hero, the board scrambling to call an emergency meeting. Suddenly, my driveway wasn't just a driveway. It was a no-go zone with a legend of its own. But the real battle had just begun. The HOA wasn't about to back down. They had lawyers, connections, and a taste for power, but I had the sheriff's blessing, a streak of stubborn and maybe just enough crazy to outlast them. I spent the next few days reinforcing everything: thicker mats, newer canisters with a louder hiss, extra warning signs so nobody could say they weren't warned. At night, I heard footsteps on my gravel. Floodlights snapped on, and there were two figures in hoodies poking my traps with a broomstick. One tripped a hose blue dye everywhere all over their pants and faces. They screamed, ran, left blue footprints down the block. Next day, Caldwell asked if I wanted to press charges. I didn't. It was warning enough. He just said whoever's got blue jeans today probably learned their lesson. The HOA switched tactics, sent contractors to measure my lawn, left notes accusing me of endangering kids, even though no kid ever set foot on my property, filed noise complaints, whatever they could throw. I refused to bite, doubled down on neighborly kindness, helped old folks with groceries, waved to the dog walkers, handed the mailman a coffee every morning. You'd be surprised how fast a community changes when they see someone stand up. Neighbors started nodding, even stopped by to share stories. In old property records, turns out the HOA had been overreaching for years, enforcing rules that weren't even in their bylaws. We formed a coalition, dug through documents, found budget irregularities, double-billed landscaping fees, all kinds of stuff. My folder was now marked leverage. The next HOA meeting was a circus. I walked in with a thick folder, handed out copies of deeds, laid out everything: timeline, sheriff visits, video, the whole shebang. The board squirmed. A few residents clapped. Instead of threats, I told them, keep pushing and I'll file a county complaint. Invited them to check my setup for themselves. After that, things shifted. The board stopped open harassment and went quieter, but not gone. City inspectors started showing up, environmental officers worried about the dye code guys measuring canisters. Each time I explained, documented, offered coffee, they left impressed, or at least satisfied, and my system kept getting better. Brighter dye, motion-activated speakers, live stream cameras, even a text alert if someone messed with a canister. But it was never just about traps. This was about reclaiming control, dignity. Late one night, I caught another car idling on my street, two people sneaking toward my garage. I set a decoy fake cameras, a box labeled sensor controls. Sure enough, caught everything on video. Turned out it was the president's cousin. A real piece of work with a record for vandalism. Caldwell told me to sit on the evidence for now, use it as leverage, so we did. Over coffee in my garage, a half-dozen homeowners swapped war stories, and we built up the signatures to force a board vote. The board tried to stall, but our attorney, by now we had won, forced the issue. The night before the vote, someone tried to sabotage my setup, left behind a crowbar hammer map of my property. Caldwell increased patrols, and I sat up all night on my porch just watching. The new board got elected, rolled back the worst rules, refunded unjust fines, hosted a neighborhood barbecue. Things got better, but the old president kept circling in her black SUV, the bitterness in her eyes clear as day. But the threats didn't stop. My mailbox was tampered with, cameras knocked aside. Anonymous flyers smeared my name. Even my sister got pictures of her house dropped at her door. Caldwell and the county started a real investigation. Turns out the old board had made fake payments, inflated invoices, all the classic moves. Indictments landed. A couple of the president's relatives got arrested breaking into my shed carrying more flyers and spray paint. News vans came. Neighbors started sharing their own stories, how the board had fined them for birthday parties, garden beds, even the color of their mailbox. For the first time, folks started to hope for something better. The old president tried to up the anti-drones tech, anonymous threats, even hired muscle, but every move only made our coalition stronger. One stormy night caught two guys trying to set fire to my dock. Caldwell got them red-handed, and the evidence traced right back to the president's circle. The county pressed charges. RICO talk started swirling, and for once, the neighborhood stood together, not out of fear, but out of pride. I started dismantling my defenses, rolling up the mats, draining the dye, taking down the signs, kept the cameras, but mostly out of habit. As winter settled in, things got quiet like the forest after the storm. A new rhythm took hold. The new board was open. Honest invited county officials to teach about property rights, set up a watch program. My driveway went back to just being a driveway. People stopped me for advice, not gossip. And for the first time in a long while, I started living again, fixing up my old boat, fishing at sunrise, inviting neighbors for coffee. At the big holiday meeting, I thanked everyone, reminded them how fast power can slip from servant to master, and told them it's on all of us to watch each other's backs. Some folks asked me to run for the board. No thanks, I said. I'll stick to my porch and my lake. But I watched as people began to believe again, not in the board, but in each other. Caldwell, ready to retire, stopped by to say the case was almost closed. "You gave me the best story of my career," he said, and we just stood there, steam rising from our mugs, watching the sun come up. So here's my question after a year like that. Where do you draw the line between standing up for yourself and becoming the legend everyone talks about at the diner? Does justice come from the law or from people finally standing up together? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment. Share your story. Tell me where you stand on all this, because if there's one thing I learned, it's that the real battle for any neighborhood isn't fought with dye packs and security cameras. It's fought with stubbornness, solidarity, and just enough hope to keep things moving forward.